Hey everyone, it's ENDYMION, and today I got some interesting news surrounding CD PROJEKT RED and their ongoing denial of pandering to identity politics when it comes to hiring practices as well as their overall company vision. I have plenty of receipts in this video. I want to also look into a new product that CD Projekt is releasing that is attacking Cyberpunk edge runners, that is proving that this disdain for what makes these franchises popular are being sacrificed in very weird ways, almost humiliation ritual-esque if you will. Anyways, so let's dive in. Firstly, CD PROJEKT RED. You may already know that I reported in a video a little while back that company is riddled with DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion policies all over from top to bottom. Then the CEO of CD said I was lying, only for me to prove him wrong with evidence, and then the entire internet for the most part came to my side. It was glorious to say the least. Anyways, there's more you need to know about this current rotting, if you will, of CD Projekt from within. This information was compiled by Arturs Miorowski. He's a developer behind the game Soulash 2. You may remember Soulash 2 getting a ton of heat from LGBTQ+ whatever other letters attached to their name getting mad at Artur because he refused to add same-sex marriage to his game. They got very mad, but the gaming community stood up for him and made his indie game a massive success. Artur then, after seeing what happened between me and the CEO, decided to dig deeper himself. And the receipts that he found are interesting to say the least, so this part of the video is no small effort, all due to Artur's findings, so please thank him on Twitter or give him a follow. He's a game dev that doesn't bend the knee to the mob and instead tells them to kick rocks. We love to see it. So like I was saying, CD PROJEKT RED is absolutely infested with DEI nonsense. I proved this already, but it gets far worse the more you look into it. Artur discovered via CD's own website their ESG reports, and it's not good. So let's look into that now. CD's website tells the exact time frame of when ESG, or environmental social governance, which in case you don't know is like a social credit score for companies to show how much they pander. Anyway, this example you can see here states from their website, our activities involve ESG, environmental, social, and governance aspects. In our business strategies formally adopted by the board in 2022, we list 5 ESG ambitions which shape our approach to responsible business development. Further sections of this report will describe the tools and activities used to achieve each of these ambitions. So we can now confirm 100% that the exact moment that CD Projekt decided to adopt ESG is 2022 officially, which is of course 2 years after Cyberpunk came out and 7 years after Witcher 3. This makes sense why Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077, at least in its original state, felt like a CD Projekt game proper, despite the bugginess at launch of the story and the side quests were undeniably the CD Projekt that players wanted and loved. This brings us to the next bit of damning evidence I think everyone should become aware of in this next part, which is titled Diversity on the Governing Bodies of CD Projekt. This section details exactly who and what is in power within the company itself, and also how this diversity policy, as they call it, will mold the future of CD Projekt. Let's read along. It states, in line with the company's diversity policy, a general non-discrimination principle applies to teams and bodies of CD Projekt, and consequently also to members of the management board and supervisory board as well as other top managers. The company's policy with regard to its corporate bodies and other top managers is to appoint creative individuals who have the required competences, professional experience, and educational background. Members of the management board and supervisory board possess expertise in areas such as management and marketing, finance, law, and IT. All members of the management board of CD Projekt have long-standing experience as holders of managerial positions at CD Projekt Group member companies. Now here's where things get interesting. It states then, company activities related to improving gender balance on governing bodies will be taken in accordance with the applicable regulations, and will acknowledge the opinions of members of the supervisory board or shareholders who exercise their voting rights at the general meeting, and are empowered to appoint members of the management board and the supervisory board respectively. In 2023, the management board of CD Projekt consisted solely of men, whereas the supervisory board included one woman, who was also its deputy chairperson during the reporting period. So what this part of their ESG reporting is saying is that CD PROJEKT RED originally was filling their positions with individuals who were by all means suited for their jobs based on experience and talent. However, due to this embracing of ESG in 2022, it's clear by 2023 that CD had already begun to start molding itself differently due to the existence of ESG within the company. They are actively looking to replace roles filled by men with women, or people of color, I guess you could say, due to this ESG wish fulfillment they're pushing. After all, this section is quite literally called diversity on the governing bodies. This raises a question that Arthur also brought up, which is, with this new policy in place, does it mean that if a man and a woman both apply for the same position in the higher echelons of CD Projekt, will the woman be chosen over the man simply because of diversity and gender inequality reasons? Even if the woman applicant may not be as experienced for the job, does her existence as a woman override and replace any chance that the male applicant could have in the future? This may just be the case, and that, my dear viewers, is ESG working its intended magic. It's about not doing things that make sense or making decisions based on facts, but instead bending the rules, so to speak, to leverage what they believe is important over efficiency and long-term profit in the name of diversity and so-called equality. It's ridiculous is what it is, but it keeps going. Next up, we can see this picture here, which details where CD Projekt lands on the ESG rating board, if you will. Doesn't take a genius to look at this for 5 seconds and realize that in terms of what ESG wants, CD Projekt is very evidently failing and getting very bad scores. MSCI, S&P Global, and ISS ESG, for example, are each their own companies that handle things like equity, assets, and the ranking of other companies when it comes to compliance with the global demands of what these investors are looking for. And since ESG is a big thing with diversity, this graph is showing you how CD Projekt ranks with each of these companies based on their own values and criterias. So as of this right now, CD Projekt is failing these companies when it comes to their pandering. Next is CDPR's agenda for employment, and generally speaking, most of this is objectively fine. They want to pay people equally regardless of gender, which, I mean, yeah, that makes sense, because despite what some communist tells you, the whole gender pay gap thing is not a real thing, because if it was, then every company would just hire women only because they're cheaper. But if you tell them that, they'll just roll their eyes because they're morons, but anyways. But there are some parts that raise an eyebrow in a not good way. For example, in material issues, it states, strengthening the DEI culture at CD Projekt by, among others, fostering inclusive leadership. This is just corporate speak for we want to hire people who aren't white into positions of power simply because they are not white. That's what that means. There's also more worrying stuff under goals for 2025, which state carrying out pilot training in the area of DEI and incorporating DEI in the general development path. So CD Projekt, seeing that they're failing these companies' lame requirements for higher scores, will now make DEI a priority when it comes to the training and recruitment when someone applies to CDPR. This means that, let's say, a brown person and a white guy apply to CDPR for the same position. Objectively speaking, the brown person will get chosen because he or she or whatever is, by their definition, a minority at CDPR. It doesn't matter if the white guy is better at the job or more qualified, because he is white-skinned and a male, therefore he is looked over in favor of other applicants. If you're wondering what happens to companies when they do this sort of thing, look at Twitter before Elon Musk bought it. Hordes of diverse women worked there who admitted to doing absolutely nothing most of the day besides drinking free lattes, lounging around, literally sleeping at times, and just generally wasting company funds, while Twitter became more restrictive with free speech and the bloat of the staff led to nothing getting done most of the time. If you don't believe me, there are plenty of clips on TikTok and YouTube where these employees that worked at Twitter before will show you their day. When you look at it, you will lose your mind, dude. But let's keep going. Twitter, or X as it's known now, is ran by a much smaller team of individuals compared to the insane bloated staff that Twitter had before. Most of these DEI hires were also fired, and largely speaking, X is primarily kept alive and working by core teams of predominantly men who are also great at their jobs. And yet, if you go on X or Twitter now, not only does it run better, but its free speech limitations are much more lenient, for better or worse, depending on who you ask. But objectively, the site runs perfectly fine and operates at a better efficiency with far less than a third of the staff that it had before. Why I'm talking about Twitter right now is because what CD Projekt Red is becoming is what X is, but in reverse. When they made the Witcher games and Cyberpunk, they were Elon Musk's X as it is right now. Not nearly as bloated, full of specialized talent that was amazing at what they did and so on. But where CD is heading is becoming like the old Twitter, full of bloat and people being hired and promoted based on things that have nothing to do with the actual work, talent, or really anything else. By the way, this bloat, so to speak, it exists across the industry, not just games either. We're talking everywhere. But the fact CD wants to make these DEI things a priority should be reason alone to criticize them openly, especially after their CEO said they don't follow DEI policies or anything but only hire on talent or merit, when everything I showed in previous videos, and even this one, well, it proves it otherwise. It does get weirder though. Turns out this DEI culture stuff actually started to take hold, well, not fully, but at least the beginning steps were happening around 2018. Which, funnily enough, that's the same year that Sweet Baby Inc. was founded, but around the midway point of this section, which is called Reinforcing the DEI Culture at CD Projekt, among others by promoting inclusive leadership, it says, since 2018, a diversity policy has been placed at CD Projekt. This policy sets forth core values upon which our organizational culture is based. CD Projekt is also a signatory of the Diversity Charter, an international initiative under the auspices of the European Commission, which obligates us to forbid discrimination in the workplace and take action to create and promote diversity and engage team members and business partners in such actions. So they are being forced by this DEI charter policy to enforce DEI into every aspect of their company, but the CEO, of course, will say otherwise. Right, yeah, he was definitely lying. It's wild how much more keeps falling out like this. This next section is also very interesting. So CDPR details what makes up the collective total of their devs at their studios. In terms of women working there, they decreased 1% in women at CDPR from 32 to 31% from 22 to 23. Women holding manager positions within CDPR is at 24%, and the actual women devs at CDPR also dropped 3% from 24 to 21% in 2023 as well. In terms of their actual workforce, the majority of them are between the ages of 26 to 40 years old, which is actually nice to see so many young people working there. Yes, you guys watching who are in your mid-30s to early 40s, relax, you're not old, alright? I'm lumping you guys in too. You're still spry young chickens, okay? 40 is not old. I mean, it's old if you're going to a club full of 18-year-olds, I guess, but 40 is a good number. Anyways, moving on, they also stated at the end of 2023 overall that 18% of CDPR was from foreign national countries outside of Poland, which is where CDPR is located. And they have 6 disabled people working there, which I mean, it's very weird to just point out those people, but there you go. I guess disabled people are like bonus ESG points or something, which is kind of weird. I mean, they're just normal people like everyone else, but I guess CDPR is trying to wring out as much ESG points as they can. Furthermore, they detailed that CDPR is hell-bent on ensuring that more women work at their studios and will go to any lengths to ensure this happens in the future. They are working on improving the conditions for women exclusively, and they also want to keep pushing for things like Diversity Week, which is where the company effectively forces their employees to actively engage and learn about the cultures of the other employees. This is likely mandatory. If you just don't care and just want to go home and relax, it's likely frowned upon by management. So instead, you are obligated to engage with it to open your eyes more, I guess. They also, of course, push for Pride Month, which is a ridiculous celebration to begin with, because why does anyone need to be celebrated for what they like to do in the bedroom? It's all just so tiresome. But when you realize that Pride Month is just a corporation-filled pandering ESG cocktail to increase their numbers for investors, it quickly diminishes the importance of the whole idea and shows you what it really is, which is just pandering to make these companies look better. They don't actually care about any of this stuff. Artur also comments saying that he notices, based on what he found, that what CDPR is pushing for in terms of all of these initiatives is technically a global left-wing like ideological push. But Artur also points out that he doesn't see any celebrations or mandated weeks that are being dedicated to things like Polish culture or other things like Christianity or promotions of having children, which Poland's population is declining year over year. Basically, the gist of it is that CDPR is not advocating for the core principles of the nation of Poland that it originates from in any way. Instead, only outside cultures and Western concepts like Pride Month and so on are mandated, pushed, and celebrated instead. I mean, technically speaking, if your 18% of DEI hires are working amongst a group of devs who are 82% native Polish people, wouldn't it make sense to at least show that 18% the culture and traditions of the overwhelmingly Polish presence within CDPR? Not to indoctrinate them, mind you, but to show them that, hey, this is where CDPR was born, this is where we're from, how we live, etc., etc. But my question then to all of you is, if they did that, would they be labeled as conservatives and evil for pushing things that are pro-family, religion, and nationality instead? And could the DEI policies that the CEO tells you doesn't exist but absolutely do be the core reason why the Polish identity at the heart of CDPR, which are a culture and history of white people being systematically oppressed to make way for a new age of ideologically opposed cultures that don't value what CDPR was built upon, all because the executives are terrified of being called racist or something else? And the final section here is to show you that CDPR is dedicated to pushing social changes going forward. I do find it interesting that CDPR makes no mention of educating that 18% of workers on things like the dangers of communism, considering, as Polish people, they would know very well the damages of that certain ideology. But this could be not being taught or pushed because to oppose communism is seen as racist or problematic in the eyes of leftists worldwide, which it is. The rise of communism in general would have the forefathers of not only Poland, but most of Western Europe, and especially America, doing somersaults in their graves, seeing how openly embraced such a moronic and damaging ideology has become. We are genuinely living in both a time of great innovation, while the dumbest people imaginable are gathering into groups to push for changes in society that will ultimately destroy the very safety nets they cling onto for dear life, all in the name of being activists. And that's what I've noticed above all based on all the information I shared with you guys today. Everything I shared with you can be condensed into one single sentence, which is simply this: that CD Projekt Red is doing their best to turn their studios and the devs within them into political activists on purpose in the name of ESG and DEI. We've seen these practices rot out studios like Rocksteady already, or lead to companies making games meant to push such activism on purpose, like Dustborn with Red Thread Games. Even Insomniac has begun down the path of activism as well, and boy, let me tell you, seeing CDPR, a Polish-founded studio, heading down this path, that is the most damning of it all. Polish people know better than anyone that far left-leaning ideologies can and will destroy societies. Advocating for mass immigration, rejection of traditional religion, and embracing activism through social efforts like Pride Month and more will do nothing for your country and people but confuse, divide, and weaken them in the future. But perhaps that's the goal of this all along. What easier way to take something over than the very people you're up against not being able to know their own gender or allegiances or even their country's identity or struggles in the past? Because a person removed from what made them strong is destined to be taken over with ease. I should also bring attention to a new merch piece CDPR is selling from Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which is called The Final Moment and shows Atom Smasher descending on Rebecca from Cyberpunk Edgerunners, the Netflix show. A lot of people don't like this statue, claiming it's CDPR doing what can only be described as a humiliation ritual on Rebecca, but it makes more sense the more you know about it. For example, remember that Edgerunners did save Cyberpunk. That's not my opinion, that is literally what happened. The release of that 10-episode anime from Studio Trigger, it massively increased Cyberpunk's popularity and brought millions to try out the game in response. Case in point, without Edgerunners, Cyberpunk would not have had the resurgence of players or interest like they did. I mean, CDPR even admitted that the anime led to record-breaking profits for them in terms of content being bought. However, you should also remember that CDPR did not want Rebecca in the anime because she was, as they called her, a lolly, which is a term meant for younger-looking characters that are often depicted in a more sexual manner. I mean, during Edgerunner's stream once, one of the people who worked on the anime said that they voted to remove Rebecca from the anime. Watch this.
And we actually talked about it a little bit before we came onto this segment, but I really want to say Rebecca.
Same.
But I feel guilty. Yeah, because she's the best girl. But I feel a little bit guilty to say it because what happened was I was one of the people on the creative team to actually vote Rebecca out of the original cast during pre-production. Because what happened was that CD Projekt Red first got the character design for Rebecca, and they were like, she's a lowly. Lowlies don't exist in Night City. It doesn't fit the Cyberpunk 2077 aesthetic. But Sugar was like, no, the lowly must stay. And, ultimately, she's the best girl. So it was the right choice.
And I think the reason why the final moment statue exists is because CDPR actually hates Rebecca. They didn't want her in this at all to begin with, as I just showed you. And they are likely salty that ultimately what saved their game and their franchise and really their company was a Japanese team making an anime about their game. So the thing that saved them wasn't even something they technically made themselves. And you're likely also salty that a character that they wanted to remove ended up being insanely popular as well because you guys didn't create it, Studio Trigger did. So it's weird to see CDPR both openly be against Rebecca and be jealous of her, while also having no problem profiting off of her with expensive statues like this. Credit where credit is due, CDPR. Face it, Studio Trigger, they saved your franchise. And I worry that the future of CDPR's games will not be giving players what they want, will probably nerf female bodies into the ground, and ensure that men are devalued and replaced by primarily strong girl bosses only. I hope not. I really don't want that to happen. But right now, based on all the information I showed you, CDPR looks to be pushing for more political activism in the future than ever before. A company that openly despises Rebecca, pushes ESG and DEI, while lying that they don't, it's just so frustrating. Because look, I love the games that I've played from CDPR, but I have to come to terms that the games I played from them existed prior to most of this stuff ever being implemented in the first place. But is the CDPR I love still there? Or is this going to be a Rocksteady event, but on a much bigger scale? I guess we'll see, but if anyone ever tries to say these companies are not pushing DEI or whatever, just link them this video. I hope you learned something informative today. This weird, sweet baby-like agenda, it needs to be uprooted, and I'll keep exposing it no matter what. As always, thank you for watching, subscribe, thanks to my supporters, and have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.